The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with barely concealed amusement. Ambassador Thexnor of the Vaxian Empire couldn't contain his laughter as he read through the human military regulations projected on the holographic display. They require rest periods. Thexnor's crystalline form shimmered with mirth. 8 hours of unconsciousness every cycle. How did such a primitive species even survive to space travel? Commander Ryloth, a towering Kron warrior whose species had conquered 12 systems, joined in. Look at this one, mandatory meal breaks 3 times per rotation. Our soldiers can operate for weeks on a single nutrition pack. The assembled delegates, representing 47 advanced civilizations, found the entire human military doctrine absurd. Humans needed sleep. They needed food constantly. They needed water. They had weight limits for their equipment. They even had rules about morale and mental health breaks. These aren't soldiers, sneered Ambassador Veltrax, their insectoid antennae twitching. These are tourists pretending to wage war. The laughter died when the chamber doors opened. A single human walked in, wearing the distinctive dress uniform of a Terran Marine. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb moved with quiet confidence, his boots clicking against the polished floor. He carried no weapons, but somehow his presence commanded attention. Ah, the human representative, Thexnor said, his amusement evident. We were just discussing your quaint military regulations. Tell us, Sergeant, how does an army that needs 8 hours of sleep every day expect to fight a real war? Webb's expression didn't change. He set his datapad on the central podium and looked around the chamber, meeting each ambassador's gaze in turn. Permission to speak freely, ambassadors. By all means, Commander Ryloth rumbled, his 4 arms crossed. We could use more entertainment. Webb tapped his datapad. 6 months ago, the Xerxian horde attacked Outpost Talon. You all know about this. What you don't know is that the outpost was defended by exactly 42 human marines. The Xerxians brought 8,000 warriors. The siege lasted 17 days. The chamber fell silent. By your standards, my species is weak. We need sleep. We need food. We need water. We have limitations that you've all evolved past or engineered away. Webb's voice was calm, almost conversational. But here's what you're missing. Here's what you've all been laughing at without understanding. He looked directly at Thexnor. Those rules you mock. They're not there because we're weak. They're there because we learned what happens when you remove them. And trust me, ambassadors. His eyes hardened. You don't want to see humans without rules. The laughter had completely stopped. Something in Webb's tone, in his eyes, made even the battle-hardened Commander Ryloth shift uncomfortably. I think, Webb said quietly, it's time I explained exactly what human marines are capable of when we're properly rested, fed, and maintained. And then, if you're still interested, I'll tell you what we become when those rules are taken away. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's blue-green surface. My homeworld. 3rd planet in a yellow dwarf system. Death World Classification Level 7, if you use Galactic Surveyor standards. Several ambassadors shifted. Death worlds were rare, planets so hostile that evolving sentience there was considered nearly impossible. Our planet tried to kill us every single day, Webb continued. Predators that saw us as food. Diseases that wiped out entire populations. Weather that could freeze or cook you depending on the season. We didn't have exoskeletons, or armor plating, or redundant organ systems. We had soft skin and moderate strength and a brain that never, ever stopped trying to find ways to survive. He changed the image to early human history. So we learned. We studied patterns. We developed persistence. And most importantly, we learned to work as a team because alone, we were prey. Together, we became apex predators. Fascinating anthropology, Thexnor said dryly. But we're discussing military capability. I'm getting there, Webb said. See, Every species in this chamber evolved or was engineered for war. The Kron were bred to fight in arena combat for 30 generations. The Vaxians built themselves from crystal and photons specifically to create the perfect soldier. You all optimized for immediate combat effectiveness. He paused. Humans didn't. We optimized for endurance warfare. Commander Ryloth leaned forward. Explain. Those sleep requirements you laughed at. A human who's properly rested has enhanced pattern recognition, faster reflexes, better decision-making under pressure, and can maintain combat effectiveness for 18 to 20 hours straight. Then we sleep for 8 hours and we're back to full capability. Webb pulled up comparative data. A Kron warrior can fight for 60 straight hours before needing rest. Impressive. But after that 60 hours, you need 48 hours recovery time. Net combat effectiveness over a week, 60 hours. He changed the display. A human marine, following our quaint rules, can give you 18 to 20 combat-ready hours every single day. Net combat effectiveness over a week, 136 hours. The mathematics were undeniable. Several ambassadors began recalculating. The meal requirements. Human soldiers with regular nutrition maintain consistent combat performance. Our weakness for needing food often actually means we can operate longer at peak efficiency than species that can go weeks without eating but suffer performance degradation. Webb's expression hardened. Those rules exist because we spent 10,000 years learning how to make humans into the most efficient war machines possible while keeping them sane. We documented every failure. We learned from every mistake. Those regulations are written in the blood of millions of soldiers from thousands of conflicts. You're saying, Veltrak spoke up, their translator clicking, that these limitations are actually advantages? I'm saying these regulations exist because we understand what we are. And more importantly, Webb's eyes went cold. We understand what we become when you take those rules away. Which brings me to Outpost Talon, and why 42 Marines held off 8,000 Xerxians for 17 days. The chamber was absolutely silent now, every ambassador focused on the human standing before them. Let me tell you about the human concept of acceptable losses, Webb said quietly. And why you should all be grateful we still follow our rules. Webb's display shifted to show a barren planet with a single fortified structure. Talon, 7. Mining colony with 3,000 civilian workers. The Xerxian horde saw it as an easy target, minimal military presence, valuable resources, isolated location. The Xerxians are formidable, Commander Ryloth acknowledged. Warriors bred for aggression and pain tolerance. We've faced them. They don't stop until you're dead or they are. That's what they thought about us too, Webb said. At 0600 hours local time, 8,000 Xerxian shock troops landed. The colony had 42 Marines as security detail under Captain James Rodriguez. Standard defensive protocol said evacuate and call for reinforcements. He paused. Captain Rodriguez looked at 3,000 civilians, looked at the transport capacity, enough for maybe 800 people, and made a different call. The hologram showed the battle's opening moments. The Marines sent the civilians to the underground shelters. Then they took positions and sent a message to the Xerxian commander. Leave now, or we'll make you leave. Thexnor's form rippled with amusement. 42 against 8,000. That's not courage, that's insanity. That's humanity, Webb corrected. The Xerxians thought the same thing. They charged. Standard Xerxian doctrine, overwhelmed through numbers and ferocity. The hologram showed the first engagement. Day 1. The Marines let them come. Waited until the Xerxians were in optimal kill zones. Then opened fire. 73 Xerxian casualties in the first engagement. 0 Marine casualties. Webb continued clicking through the battle progression. Day 2. The Xerxians tried night attacks. Didn't realize humans are natural ambush predators. We own the darkness. 112 more casualties. 1 Marine wounded. Day 3. The Xerxians brought up heavy weapons. The Marines had already booby-trapped everything within a kilometer of the outpost. Another 200 casualties. The numbers kept climbing. Day 4 through 7. The Xerxians tried siege tactics. Waited. Preserved forces. The Marines used the time to sleep in shifts, maintain equipment, rotate defensive positions. Following regulations. Ambassador Veltrax leaned forward. They followed regulations during a siege. Especially during a siege. A tired Marine makes mistakes. A hungry Marine can't think clearly. A stressed Marine might break. So Captain Rodriguez enforced sleep schedules, meal times, even mandatory recreation periods. Webb's voice grew colder. Day 8. The Xerxian commander realized he was facing something he'd never encountered. An enemy that got stronger the longer you fought them. An enemy that had turned the entire battlefield into a killing ground and knew every inch of it. The hologram showed carnage. Days 9 through 15. The Xerxians kept attacking. They had to, their honor code demanded it. The Marines kept killing them. Efficiently. Methodically. Without anger or fear. Like they were working a job. By day 16, the Xerxians had lost over 6,000 warriors. Captain Rodriguez had lost 8 Marines killed, 15 wounded. The remaining 19 were still combat effective. Webb looked around the chamber. Day 17. Galactic Council reinforcements arrived. The Xerxian commander surrendered his remaining forces. He asked to meet Captain Rodriguez. Wanted to understand how 42 soldiers could break an 8,000-strong army. What did your captain tell him? Ryloth asked, genuinely curious now. He said, we followed the rules. We stayed human. And that made us more dangerous than any berserker could ever be. Webb's expression was granite. That's what you don't understand. Our regulations don't make us weak. They keep us sharp. They keep us effective. They keep us sane enough to do what needs to be done without becoming monsters. But, Webb added quietly, you should all know what happens when those rules get broken. The holographic display changed to a different planet, its surface scarred and burned. Kellier, 3, Webb said quietly. 15 years ago. Before we joined the Galactic Council. Before we understood interstellar law. The ambassadors recognized the devastation pattern. Glassed planet, Veltrax whispered. Sterilized. What happened? Pirates, Webb said simply. The Ravager fleet. 300 ships. They hit a human colony world, New Providence. Population 50,000. The colony was too far out for regular fleet patrols. He pulled up footage. The Ravagers did what they always did. Landed. Started taking slaves, resources, anything valuable. They'd done this to 40 different colonies across the sector. Figured humans were just another soft target. New Providence had no military presence. Just colonists. Families. The Ravagers had overwhelming force. Webb's jaw tightened. But there were 217 former military personnel living there. Veterans who'd retired to colony life. They organized the defense. The display showed desperate fighting. The veterans fought. No support. No supplies coming. No rescue. Just them and whatever weapons they could improvise. They followed every protocol they remembered. Slept in shifts. Rationed food. Maintained discipline. For 3 days, Webb said. Then the Ravagers executed 50 civilians. Broadcasted it. Told the veterans to surrender or they'd execute 50 more every hour. The chamber was dead silent. The veterans gathered. Took a vote. Captain Elena Torres was the senior ranking officer. She gave one order: rules are suspended. God forgive us. Webb's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. In the human military, there's a classified protocol. Code designation, Broken Arrow Omega. It's never written down. It's only passed verbally from commander to commander. It's the permission to remove every limitation, every restraint, every rule that keeps soldiers human. Those 217 veterans stopped following regulations. They stopped sleeping. They stopped eating unless their bodies shut down. They stopped thinking about survival or escape or tomorrow. The hologram showed what came next, and several ambassadors looked away. They became something else. Something our ancestors were before civilization taught us restraint. Persistence predators. Apex killers. They didn't just fight the Ravagers, they hunted them. Stalked them. Made them afraid to sleep, afraid to stop moving, afraid to exist. Webb continued, his voice emotionless now. 72 hours after Code Broken Arrow Omega was declared, all 300 Ravager ships were destroyed or captured. Of the 18,000 pirates who'd landed, 47 survived. They were broken. Traumatized. Kept screaming about demons and monsters. Of the 217 veterans, Webb said quietly, 81 died. The remaining 136 had to be hospitalized for psychiatric treatment. 62 never recovered. 41 took their own lives within a year. He looked around the chamber. That's what happens when you remove our rules. We stop being soldiers. We become something that terrifies even us. Captain Torres spent her last 3 years in psychiatric care. Her final report stated, "We saved the colony. We stopped the pirates. We did what had to be done. And we paid the price. Never again. The rules exist to protect everyone, including us from ourselves." The display showed New Providence, rebuilt and thriving. The colony survived. But afterwards, the Terran Federation instituted even stricter regulations. More oversight. More mental health requirements. More mandatory rest periods. Because we learned that humans pushed past their limits don't just become ineffective, they become dangerous to everyone, including themselves. Kellier 3, Webb said, returning to the glassed planet, was a Ravager stronghold. After New Providence, the Terran fleet found it. And some admiral decided to send a message. Broke the rules. Let the fleet go full assault, no restraint. We sterilized an entire planet. Broke our own laws. Traumatized our own people. And taught ourselves why we need regulations even more than we need victories. Webb switched to medical and psychological data. Every species here has warriors. But you don't have soldiers, not the way humans do. There's a difference. Elaborate, Commander Ryloth commanded, his earlier dismissiveness completely gone. Kron are bred for combat. It's your biological imperative. Vaxians are constructed from materials that don't experience pain or fear. Xerxians have cultural conditioning that makes retreat impossible. Webb gestured around the room. You're all optimized for fighting. It's natural to you. Humans. He pulled up brain scans. This is a human brain in combat. See these regions lighting up? Fear response. Stress hormones. Our body's natural reaction is terror. Every human in combat is actively overriding their survival instinct. The display showed more data. We feel pain acutely. We experience trauma. We have nightmares about violence we've witnessed. Our psychology is not built for war, and that's exactly what makes us effective at it. Ambassador Veltrax's antennae twitched in confusion. That's contradictory. No, Webb said. It's adaptive. A Kron warrior doesn't fear death, it's bred out. So you'll charge into obvious traps. A human Marine is terrified of dying, which means we think before we act. We plan. We calculate. We don't waste lives because we value them. He pulled up training footage. This is basic training. We spend months teaching people to overcome their natural fear response. Not eliminate it, override it with discipline. See that recruit? He's shaking. Terrified. But he's moving forward anyway. That's not fearlessness. That's courage. And courage is a finite resource. Webb changed the display. This is that same Marine after 3 months of continuous combat with inadequate rest. Brain chemistry is breaking down. Stress hormones are constant. Decision-making capacity is degraded. He's running on empty. Your regulations prevent this? Thexnor asked. They manage it. Mandatory sleep cycles allow the brain to process trauma and reset stress hormones. Meal requirements maintain brain chemistry. Recreation periods provide psychological recovery. Mental health screenings catch problems before they become catastrophic. Webb pulled up comparative data. A Kron warrior fights at 100% capacity until roughly hour 60, then drops to 0. A human following regulations fights at 85% capacity but can maintain it almost indefinitely. A human without regulations fights at 110% capacity for maybe 48 hours, then drops to 30% and stays there until psychological breakdown. The outpost Talon Marines stayed effective for 17 days because they followed rules. The New Providence veterans became unstoppable for 72 hours and then destroyed themselves. Both groups were human. Both were highly trained. The only difference was regulations. He looked directly at Commander Ryloth. You asked how an army that needs 8 hours of sleep daily expects to fight a real war. I'll answer, by understanding that war isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. And humans are the best endurance species in the galaxy. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We don't have natural weapons or armor. But we can keep going. We can adapt. We can think even when we're exhausted and terrified and watching our friends die. We can do all of that because we learn to manage our limitations instead of denying them. Webb's voice grew harder. Those rules you laughed at? They're written in 10,000 years of blood. Every regulation addresses a real failure point. Every requirement prevents a documented breakdown. We didn't design these rules out of weakness. We designed them because we learned the hard way what happens when you demand too much from human psychology. Our rules aren't chains, Webb said quietly. They're ammunition. They keep us sharp, focused, and sane enough to do the impossible. That's why 42 Marines held off 8,000 Xerxians. That's why humanity has never lost a defensive war. And that's why you should all be very grateful we still follow them. I appreciate the history lesson, Sergeant, Thexnor said, though his tone had changed from mocking to cautious. But this council deals with present realities. The Corvan invasion fleet is approaching the Outer Rim. They have numbers and technology superior to most council militaries. Your endurance warfare seems inadequate for this threat. Webb smiled thinly. The Terran Federation already assigned a response force. The 3rd Marine Division. 18,000 personnel. Commander Ryloth's translator crackled. 18,000. The Corvan fleet has 300,000 shock troops. This is why we question human military doctrine, your numbers are insufficient. Permission to demonstrate? Webb asked. At the Council's agreement, he pulled up a tactical simulator, a standard wargame program every species recognized. Let's run a scenario. Corvan assault on a fortified position. Council observers can control the Corvan forces. I'll run a human marine unit. Same numbers as Outpost Talon, 42 defenders. Ambassador Veltrax stepped forward. I've commanded troops in 17 campaigns. I'll control the Corvan forces. The simulation loaded. A fortified position with 42 blue markers representing Marines. 8,000 red markers representing Corvins. Standard rules, Veltrax said. First to complete objective or eliminate opposing force wins. Webb nodded. One addition, the simulation runs in real-time ratio. 24 simulated hours equals 24 actual minutes. The simulation started. Veltrax immediately launched a frontal assault, standard Corvin doctrine. The red markers surged forward. The blue markers didn't move. Webb had positioned them in overlapping kill zones with clear lines of retreat. When the Corvins entered range, the casualties were devastating. First assault repelled, Webb narrated. Marine casualties, 0. Corvin casualties, 482. Simulated time, 45 minutes. My Marines are now sleeping in shifts while maintaining watch. Veltrax tried again, this time with a pincer movement. Webb's Marines fell back to prepared secondary positions, inflicting casualties during the retreat, then held the new line. Second assault repelled. Marine casualties, 3 wounded, 0 killed. Corvin casualties, 917 total. Simulated time, 6 hours. My Marines are having a meal rotation. The pattern continued. Every Corvin assault met prepared defenses. Every Marine retreat was calculated. Every position was booby-trapped before abandonment. By simulated day 3, the Corvin forces were below 5,000 and showing reduced combat effectiveness from continuous operations. The Marines maintained steady capability. Impossible, Veltrax said. My forces should be overwhelming you. Your forces are exhausted, Webb pointed out. They've been in continuous combat for 3 days. They're making mistakes, getting predictable. My Marines are rested, fed, and operating on rotation. They're getting sharper while yours are getting duller. By simulated day 7, the Corvin forces were at 2,000 effective combatants. The Marines were still at 39 combat-ready troops. I could continue, Webb said, but I think the point is made. Numbers matter. But sustainable combat effectiveness matters more. He cleared the simulation. Now let me show you something else. Same scenario, but this time I remove regulations. My Marines don't sleep, don't eat on schedule, don't rotate positions. He ran the simulation again. This time, the Marines performed spectacularly for the first 2 days, higher kill ratios, more aggressive tactics. By day 3, their performance degraded sharply. By day 5, they'd lost effectiveness below the Corvin levels. Without regulations, we burn bright and fast. With them, we burn steady and long. For a siege scenario, steady wins. Commander Ryloth studied the data. Remarkable. Your prediction for the Corvin invasion? Webb pulled up deployment plans. The 3rd Division will establish defensive positions across 6 critical systems. Corvin doctrine requires rapid overwhelming victory. When they hit prepared Marine defenses and can't break through quickly, they'll overextend. Each day they fail to advance, their effectiveness drops while ours maintains. Within 3 weeks, they'll either withdraw or be combat ineffective. 18,000 Marines will stop 300,000 Corvins. Thex Nor asked skeptically. No, Webb corrected. 18,000 Marines following proper regulations will stop them. That's the point. Our rules aren't limitations. They're multipliers. The council chamber was silent as the ambassadors recalculated their understanding of human military doctrine. Ambassador Veltrax spoke after a long silence. You've demonstrated that human regulations enhance combat effectiveness. But you mentioned earlier that we should be grateful you still follow them. Explain. Webb's expression went cold. Because the truth is, regulations don't just make us more effective. They make us controllable. He pulled up classified documents, with clearance codes displayed. What I'm about to show you is known to maybe 200 people in the entire Terran Federation. The Council deserves to know what they're allying with. The hologram showed brain scans and psychological profiles. Humans evolved as persistence predators. We hunted prey by following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We tracked wounded animals for days. We never stopped. That's in our DNA. Our brain chemistry is unusual in the galaxy. We produce adrenaline for short-term threats. But we also produce something called cortisol for long-term stress. Most species have one or the other. Humans have both, constantly balancing. Webb zoomed in on neural pathways. When we remove regulations, when we push humans past their limits, something happens. The cortisol floods the system. The adrenaline won't stop. The brain rewires itself for one purpose: survival at any cost. We have a term for it: combat psychosis. Your species might call it berserker state or blood rage. But it's not rage. It's something colder. More calculating. The human brain basically shuts down everything except threat assessment and elimination. He showed footage from New Providence, veterans with dead eyes, moving with mechanical efficiency, showing no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. Those people weren't soldiers anymore. They were human hunting machines operating on pure survival instinct. And here's what terrifies our high command: they were effective. Horrifyingly, impossibly effective. Webb pulled up classified research. After New Providence, Terran Federation scientists studied the veterans. They found that in combat psychosis, humans can operate for up to 96 hours without sleep. Metabolic processes change, we can go days without food. Pain response becomes muted. Fear response disappears. Decision-making focuses entirely on threat elimination. It's an evolutionary emergency mode. And we can't turn it off voluntarily, only exhaustion or achieving safety stops it. Which means once a human enters combat psychosis, they don't stop fighting until they physically can't continue or every threat is eliminated. Commander Ryloth leaned forward. This is why you have regulations. To prevent this state. Exactly. Sleep requirements interrupt the stress cycle. Meal schedules maintain normal metabolism. Rotation periods prevent the sustained threat perception that triggers the response. Mental health monitoring catches early warning signs. Webb's voice dropped. Do you understand what this means? It means every human marine walking around is capable of transforming into a relentless, near unstoppable killing machine that will literally fight until their body fails. And the only thing preventing that is paperwork and regulations. The New Providence veterans didn't choose to become what they became. The stress of the situation, the sustained threat, the removal of normal military structure, it triggered an evolutionary response they couldn't control. And it traumatized them so badly that most never recovered. He looked around the chamber. This is why the Terran Federation is obsessive about regulations. Why we insist on following rules even when they seem inefficient. Because we learned that unregulated humans don't just become better fighters. We become something that scares us. Those rules you laughed at. They're not chains. They're a leash. For your protection as much as ours. Thexnor's crystalline form had stopped shimmering entirely. You're saying that human military effectiveness is deliberately restrained? I'm saying that maximum human military effectiveness comes with a psychological cost we've deemed unacceptable. We could win more battles if we removed regulations. We'd also destroy our soldiers' minds in the process. Webb stood straighter. The Terran Federation made a choice. We decided that our people are more important than our victories. We will fight efficiently and effectively, but we will do it as humans, not as weapons. Those regulations maintain that humanity. Outpost Talon succeeded not despite the rules, but because of them. Those 42 Marines stayed sharp, stayed sane, stayed human. They're still serving today. The New Providence veterans won their battle too, but most of them never recovered. He looked each ambassador in the eye. So when you evaluate human military doctrine, remember this: what you see is humans at sustainable combat effectiveness. We're choosing to maintain our humanity while fighting. And we're still effective enough that you asked for our help with the Corvan invasion. Be grateful we still follow our rules. Not because we're weak, but because you really, really don't want to see what we become when we break them. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Commander Ryloth stood and gave a respectful salute in the Kron fashion. The Terran Federation's deployment plans are approved, he said quietly. And your regulations are now understood not as weakness, but as wisdom. Webb nodded once. Then this briefing is complete. The 3rd Marine Division deploys in 72 hours. They'll be well rested, properly equipped, and following every regulation in the book. And they'll be more than enough.